Hello and welcome to another update video on Bitcoin dominance. Well, we're here on the Bitcoin dominance chart because a lot of you have asked me for a specific video on Bitcoin dominance. So I thought, why not? The market is quiet. Can make sense to dive a little bit more into the macro perspective. And well, what you can see here on the Bitcoin dominance chart is that we are moving in a sideways range. So Bitcoin dominance is or has moved up quite strongly since September 2022. And, typically there have been upside reactions in September, frequently, right? Now, just to give you some examples, we had an upside reaction here in 2020. We had an upside reaction here in 2017. And also down here, that was September 2022 low. So we often get, let's say, a bounce in September, which is why I've been highlighting it since July, that we might get, first of all, this scenario. And then in August, I started to post, okay, we might now see a bounce in wave B before we go down lower. We'll see. For now, I'm watching for a bounce simply because of what I see in the USD charts, so the altcoin USD charts. But also based on what we've seen historically and also based on the extent of this decline that we've seen since the June top, yeah. And it just, I think at least a bounce is likely. I don't think it's possible to yet call for a low here, but if a bounce happens, then there will be a Fibonacci resistance area that we can watch. Because as you've just seen, Bitcoin dominance often reacts to Fibonacci zones, Fibonacci corridors, okay? So we can add the next zone to the chart, which might be relevant for a B-wave bounce. So again, what do I mean with B-wave? It's just a corrective bounce, basically. Ideally, a lower high could form. And bear in mind, we are likely approaching the very late stages of the cycle anyway. Now, if you're wondering why haven't we seen a wild altcoin season yet, and am I watching for a wild altcoin season? Not necessarily. I've marked it here with a question mark. There are just too many altcoins for a 2017 and 2021 style altcoin season, right? It's just we just have not seen the performance, you could say, of altcoins as in previous cycles. And that kind of makes sense because a lot of people got burned, right? And if you compare total 2 with the total market cap, which kind of shows you the performance of the altcoins, also compared to Bitcoin and the larger cap coins, you see that this is an uptrend, but it's kind of flattened out. And the initial rallies, right, strong performance for the smaller cap altcoins. 2021, that performance shrinked. And so we might get another bounce, but maybe not that wild altcoin season as before. And that is typically, well, that's just part of the cycle, right? There are just too many of them, and most are experiments, and you can say shitcoins, and money flows still in and out Bitcoin. It's just a lot of money flows are focused on Bitcoin, and people kind of have lost interest in many of these altcoins because they got burned, right? So they are much more careful, which is why I'm still watching for an altcoin phase where we can get a rally potentially into Q4 or in Q4, but it will be much more selective, which is why Elliott Wave, which we're doing here so frequently, why Elliott Wave is so important, because it tells us on which charts do we have very clear parameters, yeah? If you just look at the macro and people show you, Bitcoin dominance is dropping, people start to think like all altcoins are going to do the same again. Probably not, yeah? I see it across the sector. There's so many bad quality charts, but there are still quite a few bullish setups which show clear parameters. But it might, September is generally a weak month. In these weak months, typically, it's just, September is a weak month. So typically in these months, Bitcoin has done better than altcoins, so it can make sense for Bitcoin dominance to bounce a bit. It's also based on Elliott Wave. We have a 3-wave move to the downside here in wave A complete. Could get a bounce and then maybe a C wave down into Q4. That's certainly sort of something I'm watching for. So yeah, that should give you a good idea of Bitcoin dominance right now. Hope you liked the update. If you did, please hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. And if you really like the content, then please check out the channel membership. Also, I invite you to join us on X for additional updates, chart updates, and much more. The link is in the description. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.